But he never leaves.
Yeah.
We're like me, if I were painting, okay? Like I'm covered,
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
covered.
covered. Yeah, there's paint in the hottest spots, like on your elbow. You're like, I didn't even jump your ear. Yeah, inside your ear. Like, how did I get that? Something always gets in my hair, for sure.
Always the question. Then I had to shut it off.
Yeah, so I had lunch with Brian, Nancy Mark, Renee. She works at, she used to work at Parkside. Irene. And Ron. Yeah. And Jeanette's still working. She took an extended lunch hour to join us.
Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order. Welcome everybody to our March. To our board meeting. So we have a couple guests with us today, but I will let Lita and Paul do some introductions. So Lita, if you want to start.
So, good evening, everyone. It is my very absolute pleasure to welcome Lisa Weaver to HPL. So, you all had a chance to read a little bit about Lisa in last month's Chief Librarian Report. She joins us as the Manager of Collections and Extension Services from the Toronto District School Board. So, she brings with her a wealth of experience, only 600 school libraries in the TDSB. So, she's already jumped in with 2 feet. Getting to work on some of the great opportunities that we have in collections here at HPL. So, welcome, Lisa.
Welcome, Lisa.
Now we got Lisa.
And it's my pleasure to introduce Kristen Parkinson in her new role as Strategic Planning and Engagement Coordinator. Now, you may know Kristen as our Senior Analyst and Senior Development and Analyst Officer, where she's been really upping our game in terms of statistics and the reporting that we've been seeing over the last couple of years. Really, Kristen's been critical in that. And most recently, the survey that we did, the community survey with the 7,000 responses, Kristen was really the prime architect of that. So she's natural in her new role, and in her new role, you'll probably be seeing more of her than you did in the past, but she's going to be working with me on advancing the strategic plan and also on partnership development and providing some more structure to support partnership development. So one of the things we're working on right now is the kind of internal staff engagement around the strategic plan. And just in terms of background, and it's in the Chief Librarian's report, but she has an MBA from York University, and she has a business analyst background in both the retail industry and also the mining industry. And maybe just one last comment. Last year, there was this presentation at the iSchool at University of Toronto, and Tony and Kristen went on behalf of HPL. And I had heard earlier this year one of the attendees at that presentation, who he owns a company, and he has a lot of experience in understanding business analysts and understanding statistics. And he said, you know, I've seen so many presentations, but this one you have both understanding of the like a deep understanding of the metrics, but also the ability to present the metrics in a way that's understandable. Is rare when you have those two together. And so please join me in welcoming Kristen in your new role. And we also have Monica here, who's been introduced in the past, and she's going to be here to assist with the presentation on the advanced management and scheduling. So thank you very much, Lisa and Kristen.
Welcome to both of you. So moving on to the acceptance of the agenda, can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Jennifer, seconded by Mary Ann. All in favor? Passed. And now on to the minutes of last month's meeting. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Moved by Councillor Pearson, seconded by John. All in favor? Passed. Now on to item number 4, the declaration of conflict. Anybody? No? Yes? No? Okay, perfect. So moving on to our presentation. So this will be with Sherry and Monica then.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm just going to ask Monica to stay there. She had just recently hurt her knee, so I don't want her to come here and stand beside me, but she's there to give all the support because she kind of knows all the details about this. So Monica has been the manager responsible for the solutions we're going to talk about today, and we want to give you an idea of what we've been working on for the last number of months. So there are 2 subjects that we're talking about. We've got the event management and booking solution, as well as our staff scheduling solutions. The reason why we approach those solutions as something we need, we realized in the last year and a half probably that there's a lot of processes associated with setting up rooms, scheduling rooms, booking rooms, getting requests, but also the rooms in itself are just a vehicle to provide events or to offer programs to the public. So with, we realized quickly that as we're working through one process, they're really kind of related. So we have our program guides where we issue quarterly currently to identify what programs and events we're offering. We have approximately 10,000 events a year. Also, these events are associated with a specific room or space with the technology requirements. Some of them will require customer registration. Also looking at the customers and the public identifying and finding those events. Today they have them manually through our guide. And when they go online, they can find them. But again, it's a very static, to a large extent, static experience in searching and finding those events and narrowing it down to something that really suits their needs. So understanding those 3 elements as our challenges, we actually got a group together to with a proper representation from across our branches, our clusters, central, people who are dealing with booking, but also financials, because when we deal with bookings, we also have some room rentals, there's costs associated, there's agreements, there is insurance, a number of things that are also associated with the room booking. And because of that complexity, we found that there's a lot of manual. We do use technology, but a lot of it really is people-driven to whether emails or lists or Excel files and scheduling and so on. So it was a very, it's very staff-consuming, and at the end as well for the customers, the search capabilities is less than what we would like it to be. And related to this as well is the display capabilities, because we also have our monitors that are available as display screens in the branches that talk about what events are happening, what are going. All of these elements are all kind of tied together, and we were looking for a software solution that would be in the kind of core of this that helps us manage this whole process. So the team actually, before reaching out and looking at solutions, they worked together to define the process. So we've taken a long time, and the team got together and we got it through management as well to review it and confirm that we've got the process correctly before even looking at a solution. We've defined our processes, we looked at what the requirements should be, what mandatory requirements we need, and kind of came up with what we're trying to get. And at the end of the day, we also talked about how Kristen helped us in some of the data. So we've got that impact analysis piece that is becoming more and more important for us to know how many people attended. Is there an uptake to those programs? Are we going to reduce repetition of processes and all that kind of stuff? So we're really looking at a better solution that would help us from a customer service perspective. And I know this is a little bit wordy, so this is for you to read later as a reference. But really we were looking at something that we would integrate with our ILS system in case customers are need to register for something and they want to have a record of it. We also looked at having it part maybe of our website where customers can find out, as they're searching a location, they can find out what events are happening in the location, integrating it with our display screens so that it's customizable to the local needs, and also very well searchable. We're hoping also to use the same information to use that to generate a lot of our guides, so that this way our guides can be more agile and we can have them in less time than we currently have. From an internal efficiency perspective, being able to centrally have access to all the information about events and programs, what rooms are available, what rooms are not available, preset some rooms with a certain setup so that staff don't have to go back and forth and move tables and move chairs every time somebody needs something, so that it helps with that process. But also for our room booking, reduce the process around processing fees and agreements and follow up on all of these things. Finding out what the availabilities are, what the rooms are, and having data on usage and reports. Which is kind of where that part comes in, about really understanding what the impact is from all these events and programs in an easy way. I mean, we do it today, but Kristen can tell us how long it takes. So we'd like to have a way to do that way more agile and easy. So the team, with that data in mind, actually looked at a number of products because this is very library focused. I mean, there's probably lots of events going on outside, but the complexity of our integration with Polaris, our display screens, and our ILS systems and cataloging and all of that stuff, we looked at ones that are mostly used in libraries, and we've identified about 3 systems that are commonly used. We also talked to a number of libraries to know what they like and what they don't like and what capabilities are there. And we identified, against our requirements, which of the systems would really fulfill all of our requirements. And the product that we are recommending to proceed with is a suite of applications that the company is called Communico. And really those applications is about display screen, booking, scheduling, and program planning and development, and includes a web part that would have that information available to the customer. So this is around the Communico. Do I take questions now, or do you want to keep the questions till the end? Okay. The other thing that we looked at is about staff scheduling. We definitely have, and we have continuously been scheduling staff to work in the branches, to work with specific rules and so on. And we felt that there is an opportunity for improvement in that space. We've got a number of schedulers across the system. We've got a complex agreement. Not our agreement is complex, but there's certain rules that have to be taken into account. There's a vacation bidding that goes on. There is scheduling of times, who has taken their time, who hasn't, who has priority to take things. And there's also ministry labor rules that we need to take into account. We also, again, find there's a little bit of inconsistency of the not necessarily the process, but the tools in which different branches are using to schedule. So we wanted to create some consistency. So again, we brought a team together with schedulers and managers and staff, and they've worked through standardizing the processes across, and also setting up some requirements as to what would a staff scheduling system do, and what we expect it to do for us. The main things that we felt that we needed something that is simplified as a process across the teams. We wanted to integrate it with notification to staff and also to management to know who's, if they have their shift covered, if they need to reach out to get more information or offer any opportunities for other people and so on. And being able to see that on mobile or external in the organization, they don't have to be in here. So that was another feature. And also setting up the built-in rules so that a lot of that logic that happens behind the scenes happens in the software, and it kind of reduces the amount of errors that could potentially happen by trying to apply, remembering all the rules and trying to apply them. With this, we had, again, we believe these are the things we're trying to achieve. We're also trying to automate some of the processes with centralized information on schedules. And also our customer here is our internal staff. being able to access the application and the management and so on, to be able to see at any point what's going on, who's on desk, what if they have any issues or anything like that, they're aware of it. And also automating our processes, as I mentioned. So this one was a little bit wider than 3 systems. We actually looked at 7 vendors because this one is not necessarily library specific. We looked at 7 vendors or products, and we also the team offered the vendors to come and present how their product would fit specific scenarios. We've given them examples, and they took us through and showed us what they have. And we also have identified Scenarion time and attendance software as one of those ones that we really wanted to recommend. It fulfilled all the requirements that we had. It was highly flexible in configuration. It wasn't something that requires a lot of customization or anything like that. And it would give us the ability to schedule. One of the things with staff scheduling software, some of the software schedule staff based on tasks or activities. In our case, we want to schedule staff based on hours, not activities. And this was a critical point that actually separated some of the vendors from others as well as other things such as integration and mobile access and those kind of elements. So this is where we are, and our next steps, we're going to come back with a report. We're going to look at the costing for the initiative, and we're going to come back with a report if we require to reach out into reserve for any costing related to this. We hope to start implementing both of them around May, but as you can see, the staff scheduling one, we're saying we want to extend the implementation up to December, because we do want to take it more of a phased approach. Try one department and see and implement it and see how it works, because we feel that this one will require a lot more work, especially as we implement rules and implement the integrations, and there's a number of elements associated with that one that will require it to be a longer period of time. The events probably will still have a lot of work, but we're hoping to catch maybe before the is it winter submission? Hopefully we can catch that one and retroactively put information there. So I'm done with my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you, Sherry. That was a pleasure.
And if I could just make a point, there is going to be a report coming next month, and we wanted to do a presentation just so people had this on their radar. There's been a lot of work going on in the background around this, but it hasn't, it's sort of come to fruition a bit more quickly than we had thought it would. This has been, especially the events planning, has been a long time coming in. As we start to look into it, the efficiency is significant. The cost isn't that much for both systems, but it is, we want to make sure that the board is aware of this, and also normally we would likely could pay for it out of operating, but the last few years we've been tighter and tighter in the way we've managing our operating budget, and so it's fairly early in the year, so we want to come back and make a recommendation for reserves so we can fully implement both systems. And I believe the recommendation for both systems would be for including
Including annual maintenance?
Yes.
I think it would be about 100,000.
Be about 100,000. It includes implementation and first-year maintenance. So that's the order of magnitude that we're working towards. So it's not a huge amount of money, but we do plan to come back next month. So if there's any questions.
Vicki, and then Marianne, and then
I'm assuming that we will be getting a copy of this presentation before we get the report?
Yes, and I believe the presentation was sent on Monday or Tuesday, but, okay, then that was my mistake. I will make sure everyone gets that presentation.
It is attached to the agenda.
Okay.
Okay. I'm sorry, I thought I sent it I sent it early, but I'll double, we'll follow up with that and make sure everything gets
All
it.
right, thank you.
no.
I just was wondering if, based on the fact that you said several times that there was a great deal of work involved in this effort right now, both efforts, will this free up any staff? I'm thinking of, I'm not thinking of losing staff, I'm thinking of possibly allowing staff to look at our longer opening hours in some particular, or some branches. Will there be staff freed up for that?
Yeah, and
We need to just implement, especially probably around the scheduling potentially. The events management, I believe it will reduce errors and it will reduce a little bit of the panic that happened close to the event guide issuance and the time associated with that. So there's probably going to be a saving of time, but it's currently already stretching staff hours.
Okay.
And if I could just add, I think what we find when we implement new technology is initially we don't save any time, at least at first, as we implement the new system. But once things get up and running, then you do see that savings. And I think your point is we are looking for ways that we can expand service hours and do other core service things that we need, and this would certainly fit into that. And I think what Sherry said hits the nail on the head. You know, imagine if say, I'm a mom that is interested in going to story time at these two branches. Wouldn't it be nice if I could get more customized information that's targeted for me, especially with this huge growth in events that we have, that we need to be able to have people be able to compartmentalize that information better so that they can find what they're interested in, specifically either location or subject area. So we'll report back.
Thank you. I think the one thought, and I'm sure this has already been considered, but just to ensure that it's included in the report content would be around kind of where the software lives and where the data with it lives and all of that good stuff, just to be sure we're diligent on that.
Any other questions or comments for Sherry?
Great presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we are moving on to consent items. Would anybody like to pull either of the items out of consent? Can I get a mover and a seconder to accept the, moved by Claire, seconded by Vicky. All in favor of accepting? Passed. Okay, now we are moving on to Business Rising. So we're going to Tony. We're going to talk about the Carlisle branch expansion. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by John, seconded by Councillor Partridge. Tony.
Okay, thank you. So as you are all aware, Councillor Partridge has secured $1 million in funding for the Carlisle branch expansion project, and we are requesting that use of up to $250,000 of that funding be approved to proceed with developing a shovel-ready detailed design. Now, the requested funds would cover the prime consultant costs, as well as things like geotechnical reports, environmental assessments, and project management fees. And for some background, as you know, the Carlisle project is identified in our facilities master plan as one of 2 facilities that are not sustainable in their current location. And we engaged DPAI architects last year to complete a feasibility study for a 3,000 square foot new Carlisle branch that would be attached to the Carlisle Arena. Now, when we last spoke about this, the idea was that we would engage DPAI architects for the sake of expediency to go ahead with that detailed design, but after speaking with the city, we've come to the conclusion that it would be just as expedient as well as more transparent to proceed with a standard request for proposal issuance to undertake that detailed design. So if you look at the report, you'll see that there is an attached draft timeline included. And it's anticipated that we'll be able to have work on the design begin before the end of this year. And we would be hoping and aiming to be at a state where we have a shovel-ready design by mid-2020. If there's any questions?
Councilor Partridge.
Yes, thank you. So Tony, thank you for that, and I'm very, very pleased to see this on tonight's agenda. But I'm wondering if you could just go into a little more detail about what would be involved. This isn't just a design, as I understand it, it's much more than that. So could you just go into a little more detail about what's included in this, please? It's not just an
Sure.
architectural design.
No, it's
Yeah.
basically, it would be equivalent to what we're doing right now for Valley Park. So we would, the consultant would be engaged to bring the project to a state where, when the funds were eventually hopefully approved and we had all the funds in place, we could then go out and begin construction on that facility as soon as possible. So it's the idea is to leverage any potential funding that may come available, especially if it's time sensitive, so then we can proceed with the project as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's very, very important to understand. It's, because, and Doug and I did have a conversation. I wasn't entirely clear, so thank you. Because, having it shovel ready in the ground is critical for any provincial or federal funding envelopes that may become open. And we never know when that's going to be. But when it does happen, they will only look at projects that are shovel ready. And so, I think that's very, very important. My last question, Madam Chair, the Valley Park that we did, what was the cost, what was the amount of money we put aside for that, and what was the final cost that came in for that detailed design phase? Do you remember?
Not off the top of my head. I'm thinking it was in the range of 500,000. It's a project that is.
It's much bigger.
It's much bigger and costs about twice as much. But if I recall correctly, it was about 500,000. Any funds from this this is expected to be over and above what we need. Any funds that would be left over would remain in the project for when construction comes up.
Okay, and thank you for clarifying that. So it would just be rolled back into the project to be used going forward. And did the Valley Park go over that 500,000, do you think, assuming that's the number?
It's hasn't gone over yet. We're still in the process of going through the design, and hopefully it won't be.
So my question is very timely then, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Those are my questions. I'm so sorry I have to go.
Are there any other questions for Tony regarding this? I actually have one question, Tony. I don't know what this, like this process here, but does it normally, and I'm looking at this timeline, it says formal site plan application would be August 2019, but then the shovel ready wouldn't be until a year later. Is it normally take a year for something like that? Yes.
Yeah, these dates were provided by our Public Works Department to give us an estimated, their best estimate of the timeframes going forward if we were to get approval today and move forward with this. So this is sort of their standard expected anticipated timelines.
Councillor Pearson and then Jennifer.
If I could just clarify, and Tony might as well, site plan, the formal application, it's not the application that takes the time, it's all the departments that have to comment, all the comments come in, the redrafting or rejigging of the plans. I'm working on right now one with the school board for a new school build, and it's started probably a number of months ago, just had the formal consultation meeting today. They're hoping to have a shovel in the ground for 2019, hoping. So it's all that, and that's moving fast with the school board. It does take its time.
Okay.
Just so you understand that everything around, it's not just putting in an application.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Jennifer?
And is there a part in this process that has community input, community consultation? Where does that fit in the process and the timeline?
Yes, I'm sure that we'd want to have some sort of community involvement along the way, just like we did, for example, with Greensville, having some open houses, some sessions for the community to provide input on the project, for sure.
If I could add, I think one of the things, as we're trying to do with Valley Park, is The assumption is once we would issue a contract after we do an RFP for design services, we would be having the architect work with us and the library board so that there'd be plenty of presentations as the design evolves, so that the board isn't hearing later on, here's the design, but being engaged in that process. And then just as in Valley Park, I think when we're getting to that next stage where there's more concrete things to show, we'd be including that as part of the process. But I think that consultation process will be more board-led, more staff-led than necessarily, although the architect will be supporting that. And that will really be something that we'll do. And I think we're going to make sure as part of the contract that the architect is coming to the board on a fairly regular basis so that the board's engaged in that design. Like that, and I know there were some questions about the feasibility study design. What we'll be doing after we engage the architect, we'll be bringing them in early to have a discussion with the board about what the concerns were and what you'd like to see.
Just clarifying process, because this is somewhat new to me as well. The formal site plan application, and then there's a period of time that happens after that. Is my understanding that process is sort of to make it so that when you are ready to submit the permit applications, you know it's all going to be smooth sailing, like everybody's already had their eyes on it, you know you've kind of crossed everything off and fit everything into the legal requirements. That's that process?
Yes, that's right. It's to make sure that there's no roadblocks, I guess, left,
Okay.
so that you can proceed with reconstructing the facility.
Okay, thank you.
So this is a recommendation, so all in favor of, okay, passed. That was easy. Okay, moving on to correspondence. So this is going to be Paul. We're going to talk about the expression of interest at Pier 8. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Jennifer, seconded by Councillor Pearson.
Yes, and I'd just like to make a statement and follow up. So attached is a correspondence, which is our non-exclusive potential expression of interest in the Pier 8. Now, so that the board knows, the City of Hamilton is going through a evaluation of the various proposals over the next few months. And we understand the recommendation on the preferred proponent is going to be made by the City Council likely in June. So therefore, the board chair, Lori, and I have been talking about this and had some discussions with the city that we're recommending that further explanation of this, the potential library grade, should be deferred until after the council makes a decision, and then we would follow up. I guess the other thing that we need to be aware is the independent assessment of library facilities is going on right now, and so that would obviously be important information for the board. And I think just the concern here is that we want to make sure that we don't get involved in that assessment, or that we're not perceived to be creating favor for any one vendor in the process. Thank you.
Marianne? It's just my understanding these condo projects are a lengthy process. They don't happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight. Having said all of that, if another opportunity, a better opportunity arises in that time frame between today and, let's say today, and the time that the condo is begun, shovel ready, thank you. Are there any roadblocks standing in our way contractually with these people that would preclude us from going with the other proposal?
Nothing at all. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, Vicki.
And this is just one of the proposals that the city is looking at, right? It's
Yeah.
not the only.
No.
Okay, so it may be that
Yeah.
this may not be the proposal that is then selected, and then we would have to see whether there was a space for us to.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments before? Okay, all in favor of receiving this? Now we're going to reports. So this is going to Tony. It's the report on the audit committee. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Vicky, seconded by Doug.
I think it's John, actually.
Oh,
John.
As chair.
Oh, yes, John.
That's okay, I'm not hurt.
Yes, John was the chairman.
Okay. The report's in front of you, it's very, very self-explanatory. I'll entertain any questions if there are, and if not, Tony can. I'm delegating. No questions? Okay, as I said, it's very straightforward. It was the first meeting we did have.
So all in favor
Oh,
of
I have a
this,
question.
oh, you have a question, I'm sorry,
Yes.
Vicky, go ahead.
It's my understanding that now our trust accounts will be within a different section than they were before. What is there a potential negative impact?
Yeah, that's going to be the main difference with our financial statements this year. In previous years, we used to issue two different sets of financial statements, one for the main library operations and the other one for the trust operations. And so what the auditors have done is they've taken a closer look and they've determined that our trusts aren't really trusts in the public sector accounting sense. And so they're saying it'd be more appropriate to just combine that into our main set of financial statements. So we'll just be issuing one set of financial statements this year. And so that really has no impact on the trust. It doesn't impact on how we use them. It doesn't impact on the balance available to us. It only changes the way we're reporting on them for financial statement purposes. What you'll see is that our investment income will go up because now we're including investment income from the trust. What you'll see is that our accumulated surplus will be larger than it was because now we're bringing in the value of the trust into our statements as well. So there's no change in how we're operating. It's just a reporting change. And, the audit is actually underway right now. The auditors are here on site all week, and I can illustrate and explain more when the statements come to the board and you have them in front of you.
Thank you.
And I just had one comment. I don't know if John or Marianne you can recall, but we were talking to Scott towards the end of the meeting, and he was explaining how they can look at specific processes, and we were talking about a cash handling process, and he said we could recommend that to staff as one of the processes that they would examine for us to make sure that things are happening across all of the branches in a specific way, because that was one of the sections that he was saying could be the biggest loss of income. So I don't know if that's something that we would recommend now to look at, but I know we had discussed that, and we were all sort of, and I believe George was also in favor of that as well, to look at that process specifically.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, all in favor of receiving this recommendation? Passed. Next, this is Tony again, our year-end surplus report. Tony, you're very popular today. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Marianne and seconded by Doug. Tony.
Okay, so our year-end surplus for 2017 came in at $166,820. That compares to $144,000 in 2016. And we're recommending to transfer that surplus to the Library General Development Reserve. And we're also recommending, as part of this report, to transfer $100,000 of that surplus to the Westdale Flooring Replacement Project, which will be taking place later this year. I'll just go over briefly on a sort of line-by-line basis so you can see where the variances, what the variances are primarily related to. If you look at Table 1 of the report, that provides a summary. So in terms of revenues, for our grants and subsidies, they came in at $104,000 favorable, and that's related to the unbudgeted provincial and federal grants that we received during the year. So that's things like the New Horizons grant, the Ontario Library Capacities Fund, the Integrated Library Digital Services grants that we receive. Now, not all of those funds that we received were recognized in 2017 because some of those funds have stipulations that they have to be returned if not spent. And so a lot of that will be spent in 2018, and in fact it's already been spent in the first quarter of 2018. But you'll see that that's been shown as some in 2017 and some will be reported in 2018 revenue. But for 2017, that's contributing to $104,000 favorable. With respect to fees in general, the favorable variance there relates to things like our CAPC grant, which is Community Action Program for Children.
Yes.
$16,000. We also received $5,000 from the Hamilton Community Foundation for Canada 150 grant. And donations, we received $20,000 worth of donations in the year. So we don't budget for that, so that's why it's contributing to a favorable variance. Merchandise sales were also strong in the year as a result of increased usage in makerspace and the fees associated with that. As well, printer and photocopy revenue continued to increase and came in at $28,000 over budget. So that fees in general variance would have actually been higher if not for our fine revenues, which continued to decline. It was down to $334,000 in 2017. So it's still a significant part of our overall revenues, but it's $50,000 less than we had budgeted for. On the expense side of things, you'll see that our employee costs, that's our single biggest budget line, so not surprising that it's contributing significantly to the variance. It's $948,000 favorable, and the two main factors there are gapping. We had some positions that went vacant for a period of time during the year, as well as the pages and casual staff hours review that was undertaken. So some hours were sort of scaled back in anticipation of the minimum wage increases that were going to be happening. You'll see that materials and supplies, that budget line, is showing a large variance, $517,000 unfavorable. What that relates to, that's primarily related to our materials and subscriptions budget. It's a budget of $3.4 million, and we came in at about $480,000 over budget on that one. That's contributing mainly to that variance. Also contributing there are some expenditures related to computer and equipment purchases. But the reason those expenses were higher than budgeted is because they relate to some of those grants that I mentioned earlier that weren't budgeted for. It's related to that revenue. Vehicle expenses also came in $23,000 unfavorable as a result of maintenance for our bookmobiles. Building and grounds was $129,000 favorable. That's related to a few factors. First of all, our hydro costs were $131,000 favorable. That was favorable last year as well. Security costs, though, came in $85,000 over budget. Our contract for security actually needs to be renewed this year. We have to do a request for a proposal for that service, so we'll have a better handle on what our costs are going to be over the next few years soon. Also, contractual services, $183,000 unfavorable, and what that relates to is mainly our annual lease and maintenance costs for things like our sorters, our self-check units, and our RFID gates. And if you recall, we actually increased the budget for that line item by $100,000 in 2018, and we have plans to increase it by a further $50,000 in each of 2019 and 20 to bring that variance back in line. Also contributing to that unfavorable variance was things like rent, which was higher than budgeted for Binbrook and Dundas, and also program costs. But again, a lot of those program expenses relate to grant funding that we receive, so it's offset by those amounts. You'll see that the last budget line item there, the reserves and recoveries, so that's showing as an unfavorable variance. But if you look at Table 3, I know this is sometimes hard to grasp, but Table 3 I hope helps understand how this sort of looks and works. So there's budgeted city cost allocation expenses that we incur. There's also budgeted reserve transfers that we budget for. And then there's also unbudgeted reserve transfers that relate to surpluses and favorable variances in other accounts that because of those favorable variances, we're able to transfer some funds to reserves for things like printer revenues for future replacement printers, for things like computer hardware for future computer purchase use. So if you look at Table 3, you'll see that that's really what's driving the unfavorable variance, because those things aren't budgeted for. We don't know what the surpluses are going to be in any given year. And so really it's an offset. The revenue associated with that expense is in another budget line. And when you take all those together, you'll see that we have $166,000. That's the net surplus for the year. And like I said, we're recommending that $100,000 of that gets transferred to the Westdale carpet replacement project.
Thank you, Tony. Any questions for Tony on this report? Doug and then Claire, please.
Would we not have budgeted for the carpet replacement in Westdale? Rather than, I think it was 2 meetings ago, it was it was mentioned that we're going to be doing the carpets in Westdale. 2 meetings after that, now it's sort of a gotcha that we're going to pay for it with this surplus transfer.
Yeah, I think the request for the closure for Westdale was brought to the board's attention at a couple of meetings ago. And then, yeah, the funding was, there was no funding previously approved or allocated for Westdale. It would either come out through operating, if we were to move ahead with it, or through reserves. Given the extent of the work, I think it's more prudent to use reserves.
Just curious for the grants from the Hamilton Community Foundation and what I can interpret as a grant from CAPC. Is there a reason why it's being put under fees in general instead of under our grants and subsidies line item?
Yeah, the grants and subsidies line item refers to provincial and federal grants. The fees in general includes third-party grants from non-government organizations.
Is that, maybe this is just sort of standard financial reporting, or is that something that we should be more clear on in the headings, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, it could just be a heading change to make things a little more clarified. It's traditionally been how we've budgeted and allocated the revenue.
Isn't a large part of that directed by the city? So we work with the city. We bank through the city, and so we tend to follow their definitions. But I know in the past, and like you see that breaking out of the materials budget, that was something that in the past was changed because that was sort of buried under a larger heading. So I think there's a way that we can make a note of that and make sure that that's clear without trying to change the whole heading process. It's a good question.
Councillor Pearson, did you have a
I did.
question?
Thank you.
Becky?
Thank you, and I just want to touch on, because I'm trying to find it back here. You're saying the dollars for replacing carpet. Is there a reason we're replacing carpet as opposed to putting down the new materials that we're using in the libraries now, which is that vinyl laminate? Is it not possible to do that? I'm just looking at reducing, the issues of
Allergies.
clearing and allergies and bed bugs and everything else.
Exactly.
Yeah, my understanding was the carpet was originally planned to be replaced a while ago, so I believe it was looked at the time. I'm not entirely sure why the carpet was replaced rather than some other type of flooring. I'm assuming it might be cost related. It might just be less costly to replace with like for like.
I would suggest that we could bring that back next month. If that would.
Yeah.
And I think the other.
Sorry, if I could just add, the Westdale flooring replacement, it's not scheduled until later in the fall, so there's certainly still more time to come back and clarify it.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to create work, but I'm just thinking while we have
No,
that
yeah,
opportunity,
exactly.
let's look at it.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of years since I've been in Westdale. Thank you.
Vicki,
did you have a comment, or was it?
It was just a comment on the headings. We're using footnotes. Perhaps we should have footnotes to those things like grants and subsidies, and just indicate with a footnote that that is provincial and federal, and the other ones, and any other third party. Anything that needs clarification, use the footnotes, because it's much easier rather than trying to redesign the whole titles.
Thank you, that's an excellent suggestion, Vicki. And I just have a question as well. The materials and subscriptions, when we're talking about materials and subscriptions, are we talking books, ebooks, databases, that, okay, just wanted to clarify. Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments for Tony? Okay, so we're going to defer this until next month then, or?
Can I suggest there's two motions? If you want to defer the second motion, does that work so that if the year-end operating surplus be transferred, how would that, we want to receive this report.
We want to receive the report.
We can defer the
allocation
of Westdale to report back.
Yeah.
Okay, so all in favor of receiving the report and deferring the allocation of funds?
For Westdale.
For Westdale flooring, yes.
Yes.
Okay, all in favor, thank you. Okay, moving along. Yeah, oh, yes, sorry, yes, Doug.
This prompts another question.
Okay.
We just voted on the allocation of money for the Carlisle project initiative.
Yes.
Where is that coming from in relation to our reserve funds?
That's from the $1 million that was transferred to reserves.
Okay, so that million has been transferred now by the city. Okay. All right.
Good, yes.
So now moving along to the reserves report update. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Mary Ann, seconded by Susan, and Tony again.
Okay, so our reserve balance at the end of 2017 is now $7.5 million. That's an increase of $690,000 from the 2016 ending balance, which was $6.8 million. The main reason for the increase is that $1 million that was transferred to the reserves for the Carlisle project. There were also $667,000 worth of transfers from our operating budget to reserves in 2017. And you'll see that that's broken out in the table that's shown in the report. There was also $138,000 transferred back to reserves from our capital projects that were completed and were in a surplus position. And there was also $142,000 worth of interest that was allocated to our reserves in 2017. With respect to transfers from reserve in 2017, that amounted to $1.2 million. And that's primarily for, well, it was all board-approved transfers, but primarily for those that relate to capital projects. And that relates to transfers that were approved by the board in 2017 and prior years. There was also a $12,000 transfer to operating from the Youth Services Reserve to fund the Youth Services Renewal Initiative. That was board-approved in 2015 for up to $60,000. And $12,000 of that was used in 2017. There's still $14,000 that remains to be used for next year. And there was also $25,000 that was funded from reserves to fund projects that were in the deficit position that have now closed. So altogether, that brings our reserve balance to $7.5 million, as I said, as of the end of 2017. There are, however, many board-approved commitments, $2.5 million worth of board-approved commitments. So once that's taken into account, that brings our uncommitted balance to $4.9 million. Further to that, there's also funds that are earmarked for specific purposes of about $2.7 million. And this is all outlined in the attachment to the report. And so once that's taken into account, you'll see that the total unallocated reserve balance that's free and clear is $2.2 million.
Thank you, Tony. Marianne?
Just a question, someone enlightened me, there are unallocated funds from projects from back in 2013, I believe is the earliest one here. How come, I mean, that's 5 years ago, how come that hasn't been, either it's, is it surplus or is it unallocated?
No, we prefer to not transfer until we need to. That way the funds remain in the reserves and they can continue to accumulate interest in our reserves.
But, okay, but they were identified back 5 years ago and allocated to use, is that what? Yeah, and the bookmark was put on them. Okay, and they still haven't been used.
Yeah, you'll see that some of that relates to things like the Binbrook construction project, which is now completed. We'll have to transfer that now this year, now that it's complete.
Digitation and online access, ID not set up. I don't understand that. Maybe it's.
Yeah, that was set aside, you were correct, in October 2013 for future digitization and online access projects, but that didn't go ahead as planned originally.
So it's not going to go ahead at all?
Oh, it will. We'll be back to you with
Okay, thank you, my dear. So we'll leave it there.
We've got one in the works.
So you want that money left there? Is what you're telling me. Okay, all right.
Are there any other questions or comments for Tony? Claire?
Again, not being too experienced with financial reports, I found myself in both of these, this and the last report, wanting to be able to compare to 2016. So I don't know in future kind of year-end wrap-up reports if it's possible to just have either a column or one summary report, just so we can see where there's themes, where there's really always unfavorable balances here and always a reserve sitting in something else. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I'll make sure to include that.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Tony? Okay, all in favor of receiving this report? Next. Tony, we're going to give you a break now. So we're going to hand things over to Paul here. We're looking at the annual report on partnerships. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by John, seconded by Marianne. And Paul?
I'll answer any questions, but I think, so this is the third year we've done this, and we continue to, I think, develop more mature systems to manage our partnerships, including the recently approved board policy. And so this is intended to make sure important partnerships are reported back to the board, and that, that you're aware of all of the activity. And this is just a summary of some of them. But obviously, as you can see from the report, that the Hamilton Public Library works with a wide range of organizations very successfully, and I think that continues. I'll answer any questions.
Councilor Pearson.
Thank you, and it was perfectly timed because just today, I believe I had to leave GIC, so I'm not sure, well, I am sure the motion passed, but there is a motion for the City of Hamilton to look at a museum for City of Hamilton historical materials. So Councillor Skelly came over and asked me where things were at the library with regards to the CHCH film footage. And she wanted to add that, and I said, well, let's find out exactly what the library is doing with it first before we say, okay, let's offer it up to this, to go in this museum. So could you just tell me where we're at with that, Paul, and whether it's just a matter that we're digitizing the material? Do we want to keep the material afterwards? Is it something that can go into a museum? Help me. Yeah, so we're actively digitizing the material in partnership with CHCH. So the library has a memorandum of understanding with the parent company of CH, Channel Zero. So we've been in touch, and we've met with several folks who are spearheading and leading the Civic Museum project. So I think our thought would be that we would work in collaboration with that team to see
about the beauty of having it in a digital format is that we can showcase it in a variety of ways. So we're absolutely interested in partnering with that team to see how we can embed that content in some of the museum footage. But in terms of the housing and the stewardship of the beta tapes, we have that. So I don't know that the museum, like, it doesn't necessarily make sense for the museum to take on that ownership piece of it when, but we would absolutely look at sharing that content.
And thank you for that, because that's what my thought was, is why would you take all this material that now you have to have somebody physically be able to handle it, set it up?
Well, and store it
And
is
store
the
it, right.
large piece. So
Right.
it's, yeah, we've been in touch with members of council and members of the community, and we hope to be an active partner in the project moving forward.
Super, thank you very much, I'll pass it on. Any other questions or comments for Paul? Okay.
I just think it's worth commenting that I think this list is very impressive. And as someone who works at an organization with partnerships that's much, much smaller than this, I think being able to sort of track all of these and keep them in one place is something that your team should be really proud of. And I think the efforts to really intentionally partner and express those partnerships in succinct ways and understand what they mean to you and the team is something I'm really proud that you do.
If I thank you very much, and one thing going forward that I think we're working on, which is that when we look at our new strategic plan, awareness of library programs and services, there's gaps there, and we need to do a better job of leveraging our partners to help them, engage them, in making them aware of what we have to offer and helping get the word out. And so I think as we go through this year and look at how can we renew those partnerships, part of that is going to be seeing how we can be more strategic in how we work together. But thank you very much.
Just a feel-good story, not Neighbor to Neighbor, where I work, is not a formal partner, I don't think, but I was posting a job, and I linked to the library and just said, if you don't have your resume ready, or you don't have anything ready, and immediately the library nearest to us posted the hours for resume building sessions on that post. So it was a really neat moment of sort of building that bridge and accessibility.
Okay, all in favor of receiving this report? Passed. Next is Paul again. I need a mover and a seconder to receive the Chief Librarian's report, moved by Jennifer, seconded by Mary Ann. And I just want to make a couple comments before we open it up for questions for Paul. Just two thoughts of congratulations to Paul and all of the staff at HPL for the Dundas opening. The library looks fantastic. For those of us who were able to go and take a little sneak peek. And excellent job on receiving this award for service to seniors. That is really amazing. I know that our teams work really hard to expand our programming and make sure that we are catching every age group from tots to seniors. So it's nice to be recognized for all the hard work that our staff does. So congratulations. Any questions for Paul?
Do you have any comments on anything?
No, I just want to congratulate the staff for that seniors award. I think it was well deserved, and we continue to be a leader in developing programs for older adults, and I think that's great. I did hear one comment that this ex-Libris association that gives this is a group of people that are retired professionals, and biannually they award this. And one of the comments to Karen Anderson was from the adjudicator was reading what Hamilton Public Library does around seniors makes me regret that I'm retired from working in libraries, because you really capture what inspires me as a librarian. So that was a nice story. And there's a fair bit in the a lot going on, and I guess one thing just to draw your attention to is the board meetings. We had promised the board that we would have the archive available going back to amalgamation, and so that's now available online, so that if anyone's interested in finding out going back to 2001, that's available. Thank you.
Okay, all in favor of receiving this report? Carried. Next, we are moving on to, so there's no new business, but we are looking at a second review of the naming opportunities policy. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Doug and seconded by Vicky. Are there any questions for Tony, or Tony, did you want to speak to any changes that might have occurred?
No, there were no changes, just some minor edits for
Right.
grammar.
Any questions then? No, okay, all in favor of,
Pretty simple.
receive this recommendation, passed. Okay, so now we have, a private and confidential issue, so I need a mover and a seconder to go into camera. Moved by Vicky, seconded by Jennifer.
Yeah, I'm just gonna.
Oh, I have to say what it, we're moving into camera for a, what is it, sorry? Discussion of an identifiable individual. This naming suggestion.
So much to do the two review process.
I will just, might have to take one of those lemon squares to go.
Because I understand that.
Well, you know, Jennifer,
Yeah.
that's why we like you,
Yeah.
because you are a team player, you are a team player. Yeah.
Everybody, one of the
I love the library.
emailed us. He heard or some concern about money being used yeah, last meeting.
God bless Wikipedia.
Okay, next meeting is April the 18th. Dinner's at 5:30, meeting
Yeah.
starts promptly at 6. Can I get a mover and a seconder to adjourn? Moved by John, seconded by Mary Ann. Good night, everybody.
Happy Easter.
I'm gonna have to say that I may either late or I may not be able to come on the 18th. Because there's a lecture by who is doing research about VR. Happy Easter and Passover and Pasqua and those guys. Same to you.